I never imagined my life would end up here. Alone, walking toward a rotting asylum on the edge of a dying town, clutching a set of heavy keys that rattled like chains. But grief makes you do strange things, and desperation makes you do worse. Westfield State Hospital wasn't even on the map anymore. The locals called it the Hollow, a name whispered more than spoken. It sat on a hill just beyond the last streetlight in town, its silhouette like a crouching beast against the skyline. And yet, that was where I was headed because someone had to keep watch over the place at night, and apparently that someone was me. My wife, Jenna, used to say I had the kind of face that belonged to someone trustworthy. That was before the accident, before the truck swerved across the highway, before the sirens, before I was left with nothing but the smell of burnt rubber and the hollow sound of my own heartbeat in the emergency room. Jenna didn't survive. I did. And survival is a cruel kind of punishment when the better half of you is gone. The bills piled up faster than the condolences. I couldn't keep my job at the hardware store. Every time I stood behind the counter, I saw her coming in with her bright smile, buying paint for the nursery we never finished. Customers asked how I was holding up. Their pity clung to me like smoke. Eventually, I just stopped showing up. That's how I ended up scanning the classifieds at 2 in the morning, half drunk and sleepless, until my eyes landed on an ad. Night guard wanted. Immediate start. Isolated location. Must not be superstitious. $900 per week, cash. No background check. No interview process. Just a phone number. I dialed before I could think better of it. The man who hired me introduced himself only as Mr. Davis. His voice on the phone was low and dry, like sandpaper dragged across wood. "Westfield has rules," he said after I agreed to take the job. "You follow them, you'll be fine. You break them—" He paused long enough for me to imagine the worst. "Well, you won't." At the time, I thought he meant trespassers, squatters, maybe drug addicts using the old wards as dens. That was believable enough. Still, something in his tone made me uneasy. But unease didn't pay rent. Grief didn't keep the lights on. So I agreed. The drive out to Westfield felt longer than it was. The hospital stood on a ridge, its red brick buildings spread across the hilltop like an abandoned village. The closer I got, the more the world seemed to thin out. Fewer houses, fewer cars, fewer signs of life. By the time I reached the rusted gates, the air itself felt different. Heavy, still, like a held breath. The gates creaked open as I pulled up. Mr. Davis was waiting by the guardhouse. He was older than I expected, late 60s maybe, with thinning white hair and a face carved in deep lines. His eyes were sharp, though, and too alert for someone his age. He wore a dark coat buttoned to the collar despite the mild weather, and in his hands he carried a clipboard and a ring of keys that looked older than both of us. "You're Mason?" he asked. I nodded. "You're late." It was true. I had lingered in my car outside town, chain-smoking, debating whether to turn back. "Sorry." Got turned around. He didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked over me, not with suspicion, but with a kind of measuring gaze, like a tailor fitting a suit. Finally, he handed me the keys. They were heavy iron, the kind that belonged in an old prison or castle. "Don't lose these," he said. "Locks here don't forgive mistakes." I almost laughed, but his expression stayed stony. He walked me through the main building, The air inside was colder than outside, damp enough to sting my lungs. My flashlight beam skittered over flaking paint, rusted wheelchairs, and murals half swallowed by mildew. "This place closed in the 80s, Davis explained as we walked. "State funding dried up. Patients were scattered to other hospitals, or worse, they left everything behind." We passed a room filled with rows of rusting bed frames, mattresses torn open like split bellies. In another hallway, children's drawings were still taped to the walls, faded into ghosts of crayon lines. My chest tightened as I followed him. The air smelled faintly of dust and something sour beneath it, something that made me think of hospitals and blood. Finally, we reached the security office. A cramped room with peeling linoleum floors, 2 battered desks, and a wall of old security monitors. The screens were black, but Davis flicked a switch on the panel and most blinked to life, showing dim corridors lit by emergency bulbs. "You'll stay here," he said. "Do your rounds when the clock says. Don't wander where you don't need to. Don't go into the East Wing. Not ever." I frowned. "Why not?" He leveled a stare at me that made my stomach knot. "Because I said so." I wanted to press further, but something about his tone stopped me. He placed a laminated sheet of paper on the desk. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "Night Watch Procedures, Westfield State Hospital." Beneath it was a numbered list, but before I could read past the first line, he covered it with his hand. "You'll learn the rules as you go," he said. "First night, first lesson." He tapped the page once, firmly. "Rule 1, never answer the phone after midnight." I almost smiled. "We still have a landline here?" Davis didn't smile back. "You'll understand soon enough." When he left, the silence pressed in on me. The sound of his boots faded down the hallway, and then there was nothing. Just me, the hum of the monitors, and the wind sighing through broken window panes. I sat in the creaking chair, staring at the laminated sheet, fighting the urge to peel Davis's handprint from my memory. Only one rule revealed, and already my stomach felt like lead. The phone sat on the desk, old and black, the kind with a rotary dial. Its coiled cord was stiff with dust. I found myself staring at it more than the monitors. Never answer after midnight. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, but I couldn't. My chest felt too heavy. At 11:37, I lit another cigarette. My hands were trembling. I told myself it was just nerves, first shift jitters. But deep down, I knew something had already shifted inside me, because somewhere in the halls of Westfield, the building seemed to be listening and waiting. The first hour crawled by like molasses. I sat hunched in the cracked vinyl chair, my eyes flicking from monitor to monitor. Most of the cameras showed only empty corridors, their walls lined with peeling paint and rusted fixtures. A few flickered, snowing static across the screen before settling again. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but the silence was too alive. I told myself it was just the building, old pipes, shifting beams, the hollow belly of a corpse settling into the earth. But even as I thought it, I felt that subtle prickle at the back of my neck, the one that tells you someone's watching. Every now and then I glanced at the phone. Its black receiver gleamed faintly under the harsh fluorescent light, the rotary dial frozen like a staring eye. Never answer after midnight. I kept hearing Davis's voice in my head, the gravel of it, the deliberate weight behind every word. At 12:04, the phone rang. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The sound cut through the room like a knife, shrill, insistent, a sound that belonged to another time. My first instinct was to grab it. Habit, muscle memory. Back when Jenna was alive, I used to answer calls without thinking. Her mother, the bank, friends checking in. Normal life, the kind of life I lost. But now, the rule burned in my mind. Never answer after midnight. The ringing filled the room, bouncing off the linoleum and into my skull. My hand hovered over the receiver, trembling. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would drown the sound. On the 6th ring, I snatched my hand back. On the 9th, it stopped. Silence dropped like a guillotine. I sat frozen, breath shallow, staring at the phone as if it might grow teeth. At 12:15, the monitors flickered. One by one, the screens hissed into static before returning to their feed. But the images weren't the same. In the west corridor, a wheelchair rolled slowly into frame. No one pushed it. Its wheels squealed faintly through the speakers, though I hadn't touched the volume. In the children's ward, the camera caught a small figure standing in the hallway. The feed was grainy, but I saw enough. A girl, maybe 8 years old, in a pale nightgown. Her hair hung limp, her head tilted as if listening. Then the feed cut out. When it flickered back, the hallway was empty. I leaned closer, my forehead almost against the screen, searching for any sign of her. But the camera showed only dust and shadows. At 12:30, the laminated sheet on the desk caught my eye again. Davis had left it face down this time, maybe to stop me from reading ahead. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I slid the page out from under the clipboard. On the back, in faded ink, more rules were listed. Some were legible, others blurred by age and handling. My eyes snagged on the second one. Rule 2. If you hear crying, do not investigate. As if summoned by the words, a sound drifted down the hallway outside the office. A child's sob, thin, fragile, and unbearably real. My throat closed. The sound burrowed into my chest, hitting something raw, because for half a second, it wasn't some ghostly child I imagined. It was Jenna. It was the way she cried that night, trapped in the crumpled wreckage, reaching for me as the paramedics pulled me back. I shot up from the chair before I could stop myself, hand on the doorknob. The sobbing came again, closer now, high-pitched, broken. The rule echoed in my head. Do not investigate. I froze. My heart was tearing itself apart in my chest, begging me to go, to help, to do anything but sit like a coward. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal of the door and whispered, "I'm sorry." The sobbing stopped. The silence that followed was worse. At 1 o'clock, I forced myself to do a round. The rules hadn't forbidden it. In fact, I thought Davis expected it. I clipped the ring of iron keys to my belt and stepped into the hall with my flashlight. The beam cut a pale tunnel through the dark, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Every step echoed too loud, bouncing down corridors that felt endless. My shadow stretched long and thin against the crumbling walls. The west wing was colder than the rest of the building. The air carried a faint smell of mildew and something sweeter beneath it, like spoiled fruit. I passed old treatment rooms with their doors ajar, metal gurneys rusting in place, restraints hanging loose like dead vines. At the end of the corridor, The wheelchair sat exactly where I'd seen it on the monitor. Only now it faced me. I stopped dead, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The chair was empty. This cracked leather seat gaped open, stuffing spilling out like organs. The wheels were streaked with grime. I told myself it had just rolled, the building settling, nothing more. But as I stepped closer, a sharp chill swept over me. My breath misted in the beam of my flashlight. The keys at my belt rattled against each other, though I hadn't moved. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft right at my ear. "Help me." I spun around, but the hallway was empty. My pulse thundered in my ears. The flashlight shook so badly the beam skittered across the walls. I backed away from the wheelchair, nearly tripping over a broken tile. Another whisper, this time from further down the hall. "Stay." I bolted. By the time I made it back to the office, my shirt was plastered to my back with sweat. I slammed the door, locked it, and sank into the chair. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The laminated sheet stared up at me from the desk, its rules written in that crisp, clinical font. Never answer the phone after midnight. Do not investigate crying. If you hear a whisper, do not respond. That last one hadn't been there before. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the sheet with both hands, staring at the letters as if they might rearrange themselves. But no, they were clear, absolute, and I had already broken it. The clock on the wall ticked louder after that. Each second seemed to scrape against my nerves like a nail on glass. I sat there, staring at the monitors, waiting for something else to happen. Part of me hoped the night would just dissolve into boredom, that all the stories in Davis's eyes and all the rules on the paper were nothing more than superstition. But I already knew better. At 1:43, the feed for the East Wing flickered to life. I hadn't touched anything. The monitor for that corridor had been dark earlier, a square of static and nothingness. But now, clear as daylight, I could see the long hallway of the Forbidden Wing. At first, it looked like all the others. Walls bleeding with damp, ceiling tiles sagging, paint curling away like old skin. Then the camera panned. I froze. The monitors weren't supposed to move. They were locked, ancient things, their lenses fixed to one spot. But this one shifted, slowly, deliberately, down the hall, as though something on the other end was controlling it. The beam settled on a door. Its surface was darker than the others, swollen with water damage. A number plate hung crooked. Room 12. Something scratched faintly through the speaker. A sound like fingernails dragging along the inside of wood. The feed cut back to static. I backed away from the monitor until my chair hit the wall. My chest was heaving, and I could taste copper in my mouth from biting my tongue. The laminated sheet still lay on the desk. I forced myself to look at it again, praying no new words had appeared. But there it was. A fourth rule, ink sharp and fresh. Rule 4. Do not open room 12. I don't know why I did it. Maybe some sick part of me needed to see it with my own eyes, to prove I wasn't already losing my mind. Maybe it was the grief, the part of me that still longed for Jenna's voice, that still believed in the impossible. Whatever the reason, I found myself in the hall again, keys jangling at my side, flashlight beam trembling ahead of me. The silence pressed closer here. Every step echoed too loud, like the building itself was listening. The door to the East Wing groaned as I pushed it open. The air beyond was colder, heavier, and it smelled faintly of rust and old rot. I walked past rows of closed doors, each one numbered in fading brass. My light caught glimpses of collapsed gurneys, shattered glass, stains too dark to guess at. Halfway down the hall, I heard it again, the crying. A child's sob, muffled, broken. I froze. My mind screamed at me, Rule 2, do not investigate. But the sound was coming from ahead, from room 12. The door loomed at the end of the hall, swollen and cracked, its number plate barely hanging by a single screw. The sobbing rose and fell like waves against my chest. It wasn't just sound, it was weight, grief made audible. Felt too human, too raw to ignore. I raised the keys with shaking hands. The lock was ancient, but it turned easily, as though it had been waiting. The crying stopped. I hesitated, heart in my throat. My breath misted in the freezing air, curling against the wood. For a long moment, I almost turned back, but then a whisper crawled out from the cracks. Mason, my name. I dropped the keys. They clattered against the tile, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I hadn't told anyone here my name except Davis. Hands trembling, I shoved the keys back into the lock, fumbling until it clicked. I pulled the door shut and twisted the key hard, sealing it again. Something on the other side pushed once, lightly, like testing the strength of the wood. Then silence. I didn't remember running back to the office, but suddenly I was there, slamming the door and locking it behind me. My chest burned, my throat raw from gasping. I leaned against the desk, staring at the monitors. Every single feed showed static. Every one except the east wing. On that screen, room 12's door filled the frame, and standing in front of it, barely visible in the grain, was a tall figure. A man in a long coat, his face blurred, hollow, his head tilted toward the camera, as if he knew I was watching. Then the feed cut out. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. At 6 a.m., the front doors groaned open. Light spilled weakly through the cracked windows, chasing the shadows back into their corners. Davis stepped inside, his shoes clicking against the floor. He looked me over once, then at the sheet on the desk. No new rules had appeared. "You lasted the night," he said simply. I wanted to demand answers. Who was the man? What was in room 12? Why did the rules know my name? But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. My throat felt scraped raw, like I'd swallowed glass. Davis studied me for a long moment, then gave a single, sharp nod. "Come back tonight," he said. "And remember, never test the rules." All day I told myself I wasn't going back. I sat in my apartment, curtains drawn, the smell of old coffee clinging to the air. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, even when I pressed them flat against the table. Every time I blinked, I saw the monitors, the static, room 12, the man in the coat. Jenna's photo sat across from me, a little crooked in its frame. She was smiling, holding a paper cup of coffee in both hands, steam rising into her face. I couldn't look at it for long. I told myself she wouldn't want me here, clinging to ghosts. She'd want me to move on, to take a safer job, to leave Westfield and never look back. But grief makes you stubborn. It makes you reckless. And beneath the fear, there was a sickness in me, a curiosity that burned too bright to ignore. So when the sun began to sink, I found myself behind the wheel again, heading down that overgrown road. Davis was waiting at the front doors this time. He leaned on his cane. Funny, I'd never noticed it before, though maybe that was the exhaustion. His face looked carved from old wood, expressionless. "You came back," he said. "I said I would." He studied me, his eyes dark as the hallways beyond. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. Another laminated sheet. "Read it before midnight," he said. "You don't want to be surprised." I took it with numb fingers. The rules were the same, at first, but further down the list, new ones had appeared. Rule 5. Do not look into the mirrors after 2 a.m. Rule 6. If you hear footsteps behind you, keep walking. Do not turn around. Rule 7. Should you encounter Emily, be kind. She remembers everything. I looked up. Emily? Davis's face hardened. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Fear or grief, or maybe both. "You'll know her when you see her," he said. Then he turned away, leaving me at the threshold. The doors groaned shut behind me. The office felt smaller that night. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, the air heavier. The phone sat silent on the desk, its receiver coiled in a neat spiral. The monitors flickered, showing their usual empty halls. I tried to focus on breathing, on the rhythm of the second hand ticking across the clock face. But at 12:02, the phone rang again. The sound was worse this time, like a scream trapped inside metal. I clenched my fists. Last night I hadn't answered. But tonight, the rules weren't suggestions. They were survival. I knew that now. Still, my hand drifted toward the receiver. Maybe it would be Jenna. Maybe this was the only place I could hear her voice again. The phone wailed in my ears. 6 rings. 7. 8. On the 9th, I broke. I snatched the receiver to my ear. "Jenna?" My voice cracked. First, only static. Then, faint, fragile. So soft I almost missed it. "Mason!" Her voice. My knees went weak. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, tears already burning my eyes. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm here, baby." But then her tone shifted. The softness dissolved. Her words grew sharper, harsher. "You left me." The static roared, swallowing her voice. Then silence. The line went dead. I dropped the receiver like it burned. My chest heaved. I couldn't tell if I was sobbing or choking. When I looked down at the sheet of rules, fresh ink bled across the bottom line. Rule 8. Never answer the phone. Not even once. My tears froze cold on my face. The monitors flickered. In the children's ward, a small figure stood in the hall. A girl in a pale gown, her hair long and dark, her face hidden as she leaned against the wall. Emily. I couldn't move. On the monitor, the girl stood perfectly still. She didn't sway, didn't shift, didn't breathe. Just a thin figure in the children's wing. Her head bowed as if listening to something deep in the walls. My stomach clenched. Every instinct screamed at me to stay in the office, to lock the door, to wait for dawn. But then I remembered Rule 7. Should you encounter Emily, be kind. She remembers everything. It wasn't phrased like the others. Not a warning, not a prohibition, an instruction. I grabbed my flashlight and the iron keys, though I wasn't sure why. Protection? A ritual? They felt pitifully small against the weight of what I was walking into. The hallways swallowed me whole. My footsteps echoed off the walls, too loud in the silence. The smell of mildew was thicker here, threaded with something faintly sweet, like dust and candy. When I reached the children's wing, the temperature dropped. My breath curled in pale ribbons, and there she was, not on the monitor this time, in the flesh or what passed for flesh. Emily stood at the far end of the hall, facing the peeling wallpaper. Her nightgown hung loose around her small frame, stained at the hem. Her hair was tangled, her bare feet blackened by years of dust. "Emily?" My voice cracked. She turned slowly. Her face was too pale, her eyes too wide, but there was no malice in them, just a hollow sadness that nearly broke me in two. "You heard me crying," she said. Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. I froze. "Last night, the sobbing at the door. I wanted to help," I stammered. "But the rules keep you alive," she interrupted. "They don't keep you safe." Her words hung in the air like frost. I swallowed hard. "Who wrote them?" Emily tilted her head, as if confused by the question. "He did. The doctor. He writes everything." The hall seemed to shift with her words. The paint curled deeper, the shadows darker. "Dr. Kane," I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't say his name. If you say it too many times, he'll hear you." I felt my blood turn to ice. Emily stepped closer. She didn't walk so much as drift, her feet barely whispering against the tiles. I fought the urge to back away. "You miss her," she said. The words hit like a knife. My throat closed. "How?" "I remember what grief sounds like. You carry it everywhere. Heavy." Her eyes softened, just for a second, and I saw something else there. Something painfully human. A child who had lost, who had been left behind. Tears burned the corners of my eyes. I thought of Jenna, of the way her hand slipped from mine in that wreck, of how helpless I'd been. Emily reached out one small, pale hand, not touching, never touching, but hovering close, as if she wanted to. "They lied to us here," she whispered. "Said the pain would make us better, but it only made us stay." A lump swelled in my throat. "What did he do to you?" Her lips trembled. For the first time, I saw the child she had been beneath the ghost. Scared, small, betrayed. Before she could answer, the lights above us flickered. Emily's eyes widened. She jerked her hand back. "He's listening," she whispered. "You need to go." The air turned heavy, charged. My skin prickled as though a storm were about to break overhead. Somewhere down the hall, footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate. I spun, flashlight trembling. The corridor stretched empty, but the sound continued, coming closer. I remembered Rule 6. If you hear footsteps behind you, keep walking. Do not turn around. Emily's gaze locked on mine, urgent. "Don't look," she mouthed. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I forced myself to move one step, then another, heart hammering against my ribs. The sound followed, matching me perfectly, as if someone were just inches behind. I wanted to run, to scream, to whirl around and face whatever was there, but I kept walking. When I reached the office door, I shoved myself inside and slammed it shut. My breath came in ragged gasps. The footsteps stopped. On the monitor, the East Wing camera flickered back to life. Room 12's door filled the frame, and beside it, the tall man in the coat stood motionless, his head tilted toward the lens. I sank into the chair, shaking. My eyes darted to the laminated sheet. Another rule had appeared at the bottom, letters wet as if freshly written. Rule 9: never follow Emily when she runs. I closed my eyes, because that meant one day she would. Sleep was impossible. I sat in the office chair, hunched forward, eyes glued to the monitors. My whole body hummed with nervous energy. A violin string stretched too tight. Emily's voice haunted me. They lied to us here. It only made us stay. Every word clung to me like a weight. She wasn't just a ghost, some random echo in the halls. She was a child, a victim, and she remembered everything. But the rules were choking me. Never answer the phone. Never investigate the crying. Never open room 12. All I could think about was how much I already wanted to break them. Because if Emily remembered, maybe she remembered more. What really happened here, what Davis wasn't telling me. And maybe, just maybe, she remembered how to bring someone back. 207, the lights flickered. The mirrors in the children's ward caught the camera's eye. 3 old bathroom mirrors, streaked with age. Their glass shimmered faintly, even in the dark. I thought of Rule 5. Do not look into the mirrors after 2 a.m. But the feed held me. I couldn't tear my eyes away. For a moment, I saw nothing but the warped reflection of the hallway. Then movement. A figure appeared in the glass, walking down the corridor. Tall, long coat. The mirrors showed him even though the hallway behind them was empty. The doctor. He moved closer, his head tilted, his face still blurred like smoke. The camera trembled as though afraid. When he reached the edge of the glass, he lifted his hand, slowly, patiently, and pressed it against the mirror. The lights in the office died. I stood in pitch black, my own ragged breathing the only sound. My flashlight shook in my hand as I clicked it on. The beam cut a narrow path across the office monitors, desk, phone, then a sound. Behind me, footsteps, slow, deliberate pacing across the linoleum. My skin crawled. Rule 6 slammed into my head. If you hear footsteps behind you, keep walking. Do not turn around. But I wasn't walking. I was rooted, frozen, the air thick as tar in my lungs. The steps came closer. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart thundering. Don't look. Don't look. But the human brain is weak. Curiosity is a knife you can't pull from your chest. I turned. The flashlight beam fell on the far corner. And there he was, the doctor, tall coat hanging like a shadow around him. His head tilted too far, an angle not meant for human bones. His face blurred, shifting like water disturbed by a stone. Eyes where they shouldn't be, mouths that opened and closed without sound. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there, as if studying me the way a butcher studies a cut of meat. My knees buckled. The flashlight slipped from my grip and clattered to the floor. In the brief darkness, I heard his voice. Not a whisper, not from behind me, from inside my skull. You broke the rule, Mason. The words weren't sound. They were pressure, a weight crushing the inside of my head, pressing tears from my eyes. I clawed at my temples, choking. Stop! You want her back. My breath froze. Jenna. My whole body screamed to run, to scream, to claw my way out of the asylum. But the part of me still bleeding from her loss, the part that had dragged me back here for another night, it held me still. Yes, I rasped. The doctor tilted his head further. Impossible, grotesque. Then follow the rules, or break them. Either way. She waits in room 12. The lights flickered back on. The corner was empty. I collapsed against the desk, gasping, tears burning down my face. The laminated sheet sat there, waiting. A new rule dripped across the bottom, the ink black and wet. Rule 10. Do not believe his promises. I stared at the words until they blurred, and in the static of the monitors, for just a heartbeat, I swore I saw Jenna's face. I waited for dawn like a condemned man waits for the blade. The office was bright again, the monitors humming, the phone silent, but I couldn't stop shaking. My skin still carried the phantom weight of his voice, the way it pressed into my skull like nails. The doctor knew my name. He knew my grief. He knew what I wanted most. And he had promised. When the front doors finally groaned open, Davis stepped inside. His cane tapped sharply against the tiles, his eyes heavy-lidded but alert. He looked me over once, his face unreadable. "You're still breathing," he said. "Good." Something in me snapped. I shoved the laminated sheet toward him, my hand shaking with fury. "You knew," I said. "You knew what's in here. Who's in here. You knew about him." Davis's gaze lingered on the rules, his expression unchanging. "You spoke to him." My throat tightened. "You set me up." "No," he said evenly. "I warned you, and you didn't listen." I wanted to hit him, to scream, but my rage was tangled with something colder. The gnawing suspicion that Davis was right. I had broken the rule. I had turned. I had listened, but still he knew more. I could see it in his eyes. "You've been here longer than anyone," I said. "You're not just a caretaker. What are you?" Davis's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened on the handle of his cane. Finally, he said, "I'm the one who writes the rules down. That's all you need to know." My stomach turned. Then who writes them first? His silence was the worst answer of all. After he left, I sat staring at the laminated sheet. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. And that's when I saw it. Another line of text bleeding onto the page, black and glistening as though written in fresh ink. Rule 11. Never trust the man with the cane. The room tilted. My vision swam. The cane. Davis. I stumbled out of the office. The sheet crumpled in my hand. My thoughts raced like fire through dry brush. If I couldn't trust Davis, then what the hell had I been doing? Why had I followed his instructions, taken his job, walked willingly into this tomb? The hallways seemed darker that morning, though the sun was rising outside. The shadows clung longer, thicker, as if they wanted me to stay. I wanted answers, and I knew only one person here would give them to me. Emily. I found her in the children's wing. She sat cross-legged on the cracked tiles, a broken doll cradled in her lap. The doll's porcelain face was split, one glass eye missing, but Emily stroked its hair with a tenderness that broke my heart. When she saw me, she smiled faintly. "You came back." Her voice was soft, tired, older than her years. "Emily?" I said, my throat raw. "Who is Davis?" Her smile faded. She looked down at the doll, fingers tightening on its dress. "He was one of them," she whispered. "Not like the doctor, not the same, but he stayed when the others ran." My blood ran cold. "Why?" "Because he made a deal." The doll's head lolled in her lap, its single glass eye staring up at me. "What kind of deal?" I asked. Emily's eyes lifted to mine. They were bottomless, wells of sorrow that had never dried. "The kind that keeps him alive." Emily's words lodged deep inside me like splinters. "The kind that keeps him alive." Davis, the cane, the rules, all of it suddenly reeked of compromise, of betrayal. "Show me," I said, my voice rough. "Show me what happened here." Emily tilted her head, as though weighing something. Then she rose, the broken doll still clutched in her hand. "You won't like it," she whispered. I followed her anyway. The children's wings stretched into a corridor I hadn't noticed before, narrow and crooked, its walls plastered with faded murals of flowers and suns. The paint had peeled so badly that the smiling faces looked twisted, grotesque. Emily moved soundlessly ahead of me, her bare feet leaving no prints in the dust. I stumbled after, my flashlight jittering. She stopped before a door with no number. Its wood was warped, its handle rusted. "Here," she said. The moment my hand brushed the knob, the air changed. It grew heavy, thick, humming with something electric. And then the door opened, not into another room, but into a memory. I stood in the same hallway, but it was alive. The walls were clean, the murals bright. Children's laughter rang down the corridor, mingling with the echo of footsteps and the smell of disinfectant. Nurses in crisp uniforms hurried past, their smiles too tight, too sharp. And then I saw him, the doctor, not blurred now, not hidden. His coat was spotless, his glasses gleaming under the lights. His face was pale, angular, handsome in a severe way. His smile was wide but empty. He moved among the children with a predator's grace, resting a hand on their heads, murmuring promises I couldn't hear. Emily was there too, alive, whole, her hair braided, her gown clean. She clutched the same doll in her arms, eyes darting nervously toward the doctor. I wanted to scream at her, to run, to take her hand and pull her away, but my voice caught in my throat. I was only a passenger. The doctor led the children down the hall into room 12. Emily lingered at the door, her little shoulders stiff, and then Davis appeared. Younger, stronger, no cane. His uniform marked him as an orderly. His face was tight with unease. He crouched down to Emily's level. "It's all right," he whispered. "You'll be fine. He's going to help you." Emily looked at him, eyes wide with trust. And then she stepped inside. The door closed. The screams began. The memory dissolved. I staggered backward, gasping. The hallway was rotting again, the murals twisted, the air thick with mildew. Emily stood in front of me, pale and silent. "He said it was for us," she whispered, "that the doctor could make us better, stronger, but all he wanted was to keep us here. He fed on us." My stomach twisted. "And Davis, he let it happen," she said simply. Her eyes glistened. "Because the doctor promised him he'd never die." The words rang through me like a bell. Davis, the caretaker who had lived long enough to grow old in a place no one else could survive. He wasn't just a bystander. He was the gatekeeper, the one who kept the rules not to protect me, but to protect the doctor's bargain. I staggered back against the wall, bile rising in my throat. The laminated sheet in my hand felt suddenly heavier. How many of these rules weren't safeguards but chains? How many had I followed blindly, thinking they were for me, when they were really for him? Emily's voice pulled me from the spiral. "You can still leave," she said softly. "You can walk out now and never come back." But we both knew I wouldn't. Because I had heard Jenna's voice on the phone. Because room 12 still waited. I found Davis in the front office, the cane across his knees, staring at the bank of monitors like they were windows into his own sins. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. He didn't turn. His reflection in the screens looked pale, hollow, a ghost tethered by duty. "I told you everything you needed to know," he said. "You lied." Finally, his head tilted. His eyes met mine in the glass, tired but sharp. "No." I omitted. The words rattled something inside me. The rules weren't warnings. They were omissions. Half-truths strung together to keep me from asking the real questions. "You made a deal," I said. My voice was trembling now. "With him. With the doctor." Davis's jaw clenched. He gripped the cane tighter, knuckles white. "I had no choice," he said finally. "When this place shut down, I stayed behind to burn the records, to bury the shame. But the doctor, he wasn't gone. He was waiting, and he offered me something." His voice cracked, just slightly. "A life without end. All I had to do was help him keep the rules." I stared at him, horror and fury boiling together. "You sold them out. You sold children to him." His face twisted. "I kept them safe. Safe from worse. The doctor needs balance. Rules. Without them, this place devours everything. I didn't damn them. I contained him." "You contained nothing," I snapped. "You just let him feed slow instead of fast." His gaze dropped to the floor. For a moment he looked small, old, broken. "You think I don't know what I am?" he whispered. "Every night I wake to their screams. Every morning I see their faces. But I can't die, Mason." I tried. I begged him to let me go. And he just smiled. Silence pressed in. My heart thundered in my chest. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "What does he want with me?" Davis's eyes met mine again. And for the first time, I saw fear in them. "You," he said hoarsely, "are the first one who's ever heard him. Not just seen him. Heard him. That means he's chosen you." Cold rippled through my blood. "Chosen me for what?" Davis leaned forward, his voice low, desperate. "To take my place." The office went silent, except for the faint hiss of static on the monitors. I staggered back. My lungs burned. The laminated sheet slipped from my hand and fluttered to the floor. Another line was bleeding onto it in thick, black strokes. Rule 12. Do not let him name you his successor. My stomach churned. My vision swam. I pressed myself against the wall, breath ragged. Davis's voice trembled. "I didn't want this for you, but you broke the rules. You listened. You let him in." Something inside me cracked. Rage, grief, betrayal. Every piece of me that still mourned Jenna flared white hot. "You let them die," I said, my voice shaking. "You let Emily die." Davis's face crumpled. "I tried to save her. By handing her to him?" His silence was louder than any scream. The monitors flickered. The screen in the center went black, then slowly filled with static. And in the snow, a voice pulsed. "Mason." The doctor's voice. Inside me, around me, everywhere. Davis flinched as though struck. He slammed his cane against the monitors, but the voice only grew louder. "Mason, come to room 12. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was in my bones. The monitors flashed once more, and for a split second, Jenna's face appeared. Her eyes wet with tears, her lips forming my name. Then she was gone. I collapsed to my knees, shaking. Davis crouched beside me, gripping my shoulder with surprising strength. His eyes burned with desperation. "You have to resist him," he said fiercely, "or you'll be trapped here forever." My voice cracked. "But Jenna," his hand tightened. "It's not her. It's bait. He'll use everything you love until you break. That's the bargain." His face twisted, and for the first time, I saw the man beneath the caretaker mask. A man drowning in his own guilt. "Don't make my mistake, Mason," he whispered. But deep down, I knew it was already too late, because I had seen her face, and part of me wanted to believe. I didn't sleep that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Jenna, my wife, her hair tangled from the accident, her lips moving in the static, whispering my name, and over her shoulder, blurred and patient, the doctor. By the time night fell again, I was unraveling. The laminated sheet lay on the desk. The fresh ink from Rule 12 had dried into the page like a scar. But the words still pulsed in my mind. "Do not let him name you his successor." My reflection in the monitor looked like a man already half dead. I sunk in, skin pale, lips cracked. I thought of Davis, his cane, his hollow stare. Was that my future? Was I already on the path? The phone rang. A sharp, shrill blast that made me flinch so hard my chair tipped. I hit the floor, scrambling, staring at the handset vibrating on the desk. Rule 1 screamed in my head. "Do not answer the phone." The ringing continued, insistent, hungry, and beneath the noise, I heard her voice again. "Mason, please pick up. So cold in here." Tears burned my eyes. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside, blooming in my skull like a tumor. I staggered out of the office, leaving the phone ringing. My footsteps echoed down the hall, too loud, too frantic. I knew where I was going before I admitted it. Room 12. The hallway leading to it seemed longer than before. Every step I took, the shadows grew thicker, pressing in on me, whispering. Emily appeared at the corner. She didn't move to block me, just stood there, clutching her doll, her small frame trembling. "Don't go," she whispered. I froze. My throat felt carved from glass. "He has her, Emily. He has Jenna." Her eyes shone with a grief older than her face should carry. "That's what he wants you to think." My chest cracked. I saw her. I heard her voice. Emily shook her head slowly. "He showed me my mother once, standing right there in that hall. She called my name. said she was waiting for me inside. But when I went in, her voice trailed off. She clutched the doll tighter, as though bracing herself. I never came out. The words chilled me deeper than the asylum's rot ever could. I staggered back, shaking. Then what's in there? Emily's eyes flicked toward the door at the end of the hall. The wood was blackened now, swollen like it had absorbed blood. That's where he keeps the pieces of us, she whispered. The pain, the lies, the parts that make us stay. Her eyes rose to mine. If you go in, you'll give him your piece too. The hallway groaned. The lights overhead flickered violently, then steadied. And when they did, the laminated sheet was in my hands again. A new line dripped across it, the ink still wet. Rule 13. Do not let her voice guide you to room 12. I dropped it like it burned me. My heart hammered. My hands shook so badly I could barely breathe. Emily's voice was desperate now. Mason, please. If you go in there, you'll never leave. But behind her words, Jenna's voice pulsed in my mind, sweet and broken. Mason, please, I'm waiting for you. I pressed my back against the wall, torn in two, the rules screaming at me, the grief gnawing at me. And I realized something that twisted my stomach into knots. The rules weren't written to protect me. They were written to test me. And every test was bringing me closer to room 12. The closer I came to room 12, the heavier the air grew. It pressed on my chest like a hand, slowing my breath, numbing my limbs. The hallway stretched, distorted, until each step felt like wading through tar. Emily trailed behind me, silent now, as though she knew her words could no longer reach me. The door loomed ahead, blackened with swollen with age and rot. Its metal plate had no number anymore, but I felt the truth in my bones. This was it, room 12. Jenna's voice came softer now, almost pleading. Mason, please, just open the door. I'm here. I need you. I touched the handle. It was warm, alive. The door swung inward without a sound, and I stepped into hell. The room wasn't a room anymore. It was vast, endless, a cathedral of broken memories. Walls bled into darkness, their surfaces slick with shapes I didn't want to name. The ceiling stretched into shadows that breathed. The floor was littered with toys, broken dolls, blocks, stuffed animals, all stained, cracked, discarded. And the children, they lined the walls, dozens of them, pale and translucent, eyes hollow, mouths half open in silent cries. Their forms flickered like candle flames, fragile and weak. Among them I saw Emily, not the girl with the doll, but another version of her, smaller, terrified, clutching her braids as she sobbed into her hands. The air was thick with their fear, their grief, a collective wound that never healed. And at the center stood the doctor. His coat hung like a shroud, pristine despite the ruin around him. His face shifted constantly, a blur of features, kind one moment, monstrous the next. He radiated calm, patient hunger. "Welcome, Mason," he said. His voice didn't echo in the air. It resonated inside me. "You've finally come home." My throat closed. I staggered back, but the door was gone. Behind me stretched only more darkness, more toys, more broken children. Jenna's voice rose above the silence, clear and sharp now. "Mason, don't listen. Come to me." And there she was, Across the room, in a pool of pale light, stood my wife. Whole, beautiful. Tears streaked her cheeks as she reached toward me. My knees buckled. My heart felt like it was being carved open. "Jenna," I whispered. The doctor tilted his head, watching me. His eyes, or what passed for them, gleamed with amusement. "She is what you made her," he said softly. "Your grief, your guilt, your longing. I have shaped her from your pain. If you want her, all you must do is stay." The children stirred at his words, their faces twisting, eyes black with despair. They reached for me, hands trembling, as if begging me not to join them. Emily's voice whispered in my ear, though she stood across the room. "It's not her, Mason. It's never her. It's only what he takes from you." But my heart didn't care. Every part of me ached to run to Jenna, to hold her, to breathe her in one more time. I took a step forward. The doctor's smile widened, and then the room shifted. The toys on the ground writhed, their porcelain faces cracking open. Screams poured out of them, screams of children, of mothers, of fathers, of lives torn apart. The walls pulsed like flesh, veins bulging beneath the surface. The children against the walls dissolved into shadows, their eyes burning like coals. And Jenna's form flickered. For just a second, her face blurred. Cheeks hollow, lips bloodless, eyes empty. Then she was whole again, smiling at me through her tears. "Mason, please. You promised me forever. Don't leave me here." I collapsed to my knees, clutching my skull, torn in two. The doctor loomed closer, his presence crushing me like gravity. "Do you see?" he murmured. "Every grief has a shape. Every love can be remade. You don't need the world outside. You don't need their rules. Stay with me and she is yours." His hand extended, long fingers reaching. And I realized this was never about survival. This was about surrender. I pressed my palms to my face, shaking, trying to choke back the sobs that threatened to split me apart. Jenna stood there, her hand outstretched, eyes wet, lips trembling. "Mason, please, don't leave me here." But her face flickered. One second it was Jenna, soft and warm. The next it was the doctor's cruel smirk overlaid on hers. I staggered backward, my mind splintering. The doctor's voice surged in my skull. "Do you see now, Mason? The choice is yours. Take my place. Keep the rules. She is yours. Forever." I fell to my knees, clutching the floor. My heart thumped so violently it felt like it would burst. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. Grief and guilt tangled into a rope around my throat. Davis's warning came back to me, "Don't make my mistake." But I wanted her so badly. "Jenna, just once more." Once more, my mind whispered, "Just once more." The doctor's shadow stretched across the room. The children's ghosts wavered at his feet, flickering between fragile innocence and the raw outlines of pain. Emily hovered behind me, her small form trembling. "You can't," she whispered. "It's a trap. Every promise he makes is poison." I shook my head. I can't lose her again." The doctor knelt before me, his blurred face inches from mine. His breath smelled of old books and rot. "No one has ever resisted me here," he murmured. "But you can, if you are clever, if you are strong." I looked at the children, at Emily, at the shadows of what they had endured. I looked at the woman I loved, her face so bright in the darkness, and yet not entirely real. And I realized something that cut deeper than grief. If I took the bargain, I would never leave. I would live with her, yes, but only because the rules chained me here. Only because the doctor fed on my grief. Only because I had surrendered. I staggered back, voice raw. I won't. The doctor tilted his head, amused. Then leave. The room is open to you. But know this, every choice has a price. You walk away, and she becomes another piece of my collection. Your grief, Mason, will follow you forever. Jenna's form flickered violently, caught between the doctor's illusion and her true self. She screamed, an ear-splitting wail of agony that tore at my chest. I wanted to run to her. I wanted to close my eyes and believe. But I looked at Emily, trembling beside me, and the children staring hollow-eyed. And I understood. I could not save her without destroying everyone else. The doctor laughed softly, a sound like 1,000 broken bells. Clever, strong. Perhaps you are worthy after all. He stepped back, dissolving into the shadows. The children's wails softened into whispers. Room 12 fell still, the floor littered with broken toys and memory fragments. Emily reached for my hand. You chose wisely, she said softly. I sank to the floor, finally letting my tears fall. Jenna's form vanished, leaving only a faint echo in the air. The room felt hollow, empty, but somehow lighter. I rose slowly, trembling, and left room 12. The hallway outside was still dark, still heavy, but the pull of the room had faded. I didn't look back, and in that moment I understood the truth of the rules. They weren't just about survival. They were about control. They were about letting go. And sometimes, letting go was the only way to live. The first step outside Westfield felt like breathing for the first time in years. The air was cold, crisp, alive. The trees lining the driveway swayed gently in the wind, and sunlight, weak, gray, almost hesitant, fell across the cracked asphalt. I stumbled, clutching my knees, trying to absorb the reality that the asylum was behind me, that I had left, that I had chosen to walk away from room 12, from Jenna's voice, from the doctor's bargain. And yet, the weight of everything didn't vanish. Grief clung to me like wet cloth. My chest ached, my eyes burned. The screams, the whispers, the hollow faces of Emily and the other children. They lingered behind my eyelids, even in the light. I leaned against my car and finally allowed myself to breathe. Emily's warning echoed. It's a trap. Every promise he makes is poison. I had resisted. I had chosen reality over illusion, letting go over possession. But letting go didn't feel like victory. Felt like survival. Davis appeared behind me, leaning on his cane, his face lined with age and exhaustion. You came back, he said. His voice was quiet, resigned. I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at the asylum, the black windows staring back at me like hollow eyes. He gestured toward the building. He'll wait for the next one. Always. I nodded, swallowing hard. And you? Davis's face softened, and for the first time I saw a trace of the man he once was, the one who had tried to protect them. I'm still here, he said, but now I'm just a shadow. We stood in silence. the weight of everything pressed down. Yet the air outside the walls was freer than I'd felt in months. I wanted to move, to escape entirely, but something inside me was tethered to the memory of those halls. I had survived, and surviving came with its own scars. The first nights back in my apartment were hell. Every shadow, every creak, every whispered word reminded me of room 12. Jenna's voice still haunted me sometimes. Soft, sweet, pleading. "Mason, please," but I learned to recognize the lie. The doctor's echo lingered in her tones, twisting them, using my grief against me. I avoided mirrors, stayed off the phone, and kept the lights dim. The laminated sheet had vanished when I left the asylum, but the rules were etched into my mind. Rule 1, do not answer the phone. Rule 2, do not investigate the crying. Rule 3, do not open room 12. Rule 12, do not let him name you his successor. They weren't just words, they were warnings, lessons carved into my memory with sharp edges. I saw Emily sometimes in my dreams. She wasn't alive. Her hollow eyes reminded me of the price of surrender. But she was free of the doctor's grip, at least in my mind. And somehow that gave me a strange sense of hope. I began writing, a journal, notes about the asylum, the rules, the doctor, Emily, and the children. I knew one day someone else might come. Someone curious, someone desperate, someone grieving. And maybe they'd need the warnings as much as I did. Months passed. The world outside moved on. Cars, traffic lights, office buildings. Life went on without Westfield, without the doctor, without the children trapped in shadows. But I carried it all with me. Grief is a heavy companion, clings to memory, twisting it, shaping it. But grief can also teach you to survive, to see the truth, to resist illusions. Sometimes I see her in the dark, Jenna, smiling at me, holding out her hand. And every time, I remember Emily's words. It's not her. It's never her. I close my eyes and breathe. I survived. And I walk forward, carrying the weight of what I refused, the pain of what I could not save, and the memory of every rule that kept me alive. Westfield is behind me now, but its lessons stay. And some nights, when the wind winds through the trees, I swear I can hear the faint echo of children laughing, and the doctor's patient, terrible voice. Next time, Mason, next time. I turn the key in my apartment door. I lock it, and I tell myself, not this time, not now, not ever again.